Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. You are checking out my Magicka Sorcerer PVP build, and I've got a new update for you. So I was running this build during the mid-year Mayhem event, and I really like how it turned out. It's really fun, it's a fast build, and it has a lot of kill potential, hence the name Annihilator. So I'm trying out a few different sets in this build, a few different skill morphs, and just a fun build overall. So let's check it out. We'll go over different sets, the skills, champion points, and more coming up next. Alright, so let's check out the stats on the build. And I'm just going to say first off, like a lot of my builds, my goal in creating a build is just balance. Okay, so you're not going to find crazy max stats on my builds usually in any one area. I like to spread things out and make sure I have a balanced build overall. So Magicka's coming in at 34k, health 17k, that'll bump up to about 20k in PvP. Stamina, I am trying to push the stamina on this build though, because I think it's necessary, especially in Battlegrounds. So 15, almost 16k there. The recovery is not super high, but that's not needed, and you'll see why in a few moments. Spell damage does go up a little bit higher, and we do have a spell damage glyph on the back bar as well, so that'll get over 3k, no problem. Our spell critical does go up with a potion. I wanted to make sure I had that crit buff, so about 42% is looking really good. And then your spell resist and physical resist are pretty standard for light armor, coming in at 15k and 13k overall. As far as attributes, I did put a little bit extra into health this time around. I just wanted to be tankier. I wanted to survive a little bit better, especially with slows and things like that go right for our health. You don't want less than 20k, so putting a few extra points in here is good. Went for the Mage Mundus just to help push our Magicka up a little bit higher, because that does help with shields, which we are using on the build. Stage 4 Vampire. Vampire is not really required anymore, I don't think. Sometimes it can be a detriment more than it is a benefit to your build, so it's up to you really if you want to use it. If you find like you're getting bursted down a lot by Dawnbreakers, things like that, you can always take it off. Witchmother's Brew is the drink for the build. Nice boost again to health, Magicka, and Magicka recovery. For the race I went with High Elf, pretty standard. You could also do Dark Elf, Breton, even Argonian if you want that nice potion passive to kick in. And then as far as the potions that we are using, I've got the Essence of Spell Critical, because I just want that extra spell crit, and then I do have a nice heal on here, almost 9k health thrown in, and then the Magic and Magicka Recovery. So these are good potions to have. So checking out the sets next, this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. So I went with a Willpower staff on the front bar, and this gives us a nice extra boost to max Magicka. It's going to help us hit a little bit harder, have us get more sustain out of the build. Went with Nerdhoned here and a shock damage enchant. That's on the front bar. Going to the main 5-piece now, it's going to be Shacklebreaker, just a great all-around set. As I mentioned when we were talking about stats, I'm trying to push stamina as high as possible on the build just to help us stay alive in Battlegrounds, and this having the extra almost 2k max stamina really helps, especially since we're not using tri-stat food on the build. So Shacklebreaker, a great option all around, and I am using the tri-stat enchant on this. So 5 Shacklebreaker on the body, Willpower Inferno Staff, and then looking at our back bar, it's going to be Prisoners. Okay, Prisoners is probably, as of right now, my favorite set for Battlegrounds, and I use it both on Stamina and Magicka classes. It's really, really good. You get extra stamina recovery, which is honestly a good thing on Magicka builds. And then the 5-piece is amazing. Reduces the cost of sprint by 50%. This is basically better than 7 pieces of well-fitted armor. 50% cost reduction is huge, especially when you don't have champion points to help you out. It's really beneficial. And then while sprinting, we get back almost 1k Magicka every second. I said the Magicka region on the build is not that high. That's because with this set active, we're getting an extra 2k flat region. It's really nice. So we've got that with a restoration staff on the back bar infused with our spell damage glyph. And then we're using 3 pieces of jewelry as well to make up the 5 piece on the back. And then you probably saw it earlier, using Engine Guardian. This was just kind of I wanted something different, I guess. The health recovery really is not going to help at all, especially as a vampire. But this little droid that spawns gives you good sustain. It is random though, so you'll get health, stamina, or magicka randomly when you use an ability. But the other thing too is if you've ever tried to fight somebody using this set, you know it's super annoying. The little droid guy gets in the way, especially if you know how to use it. If as soon as it spawns, you kind of move behind it, and then it's basically a damage sponge for you. It's going to take stuns, it's going to take dawn breakers, it'll take in caps for you. It just gets in the way. It's super annoying. So I thought it would be a fun alternative to run on the set, on the build. If you don't like Engine Guardian, you can use other things. I'm thinking perhaps the new set, the Battle Org set, which gives you extra spell damage when you use an ultimate. That might be a good alternative on this build. But for right now, I'm using the Engine Guardian. As far as what traits we're using, I use a mix of infused, well-fitted, and impen. If you're a newer player, I definitely recommend more impen. You could even use 7 impen. Even though this build does have a shield, your shields are going to go down eventually, and when that happens, you want to be as defensive as possible. Well-fitted is always good just to help you squeeze out like an extra roll dodge. And then infused is nice just to max out those stats, especially on the big pieces. So I am using infused chest and legs on the build. For the weapons, again, we did infused resto, and then Nirnhoned flame staff. And then I think my jewelry is all spell damage. So that's another nice thing about using the prisoner set. We're getting all of our magicka recovery from prisoners, which means I can do 3 spell damage glyphs, even in no CP, and it's no problem. And I do have a mix of magicka and 1 stamina glyph on here as well, just to get that stamina high. So let's check out the skills next. Starting with our front bar, our flame staff, we're going with Endless Fury for the execute. And you all love it, you hate it, whatever. It's pretty standard nowadays. Sorcerers can pretty much dominate. They can annihilate with this skill. So basically it has a 4-second window where if you apply it ahead of time and the enemy's health drops below 20%, they get bursted down pretty hard. It also helps a lot with the sustain because you can see 4417 magicka back if you get the kill, and you'll be getting a lot of kills with this skill. So I do run it on the front bar. I think it's pretty essential to the Mag Sorc playstyle. Next up, Rune Cage. I know this is getting nerfed. I know that it's going to be dodgeable, for example, but I don't really think that's a big deal. It's not going to affect my playstyle very much because about 80–90% of the time when I am lining up my burst, my target's not roll dodging anyway. It's all supposed to do a little bit less damage if they break free before the stun ends. Again, not a big deal because we have so many burst combos and burst abilities on the front bar that that really won't matter. So I like this skill a lot still. One of the main reasons is it's not really telegraphed. It doesn't have a huge telegraph like, for example, Flame Reach. Flame Reach has that big, huge wheel of flame that flies at your enemy's face. Any good player is going to know what's going on and block that. Whereas this, you don't really see it coming. So yes, it might be a little bit less effective against some roly-poly Nightblades and stuff, but that's okay. They need that counter anyways since they're so squishy. So I'm still going to run it. I'm still going to use it. Love it or hate it. It's on the build. Deal with it. Streak is on the main bar. I used to have my shield here, but I've decided to put Streak on the front bar instead. And the reason why is because when you have somebody, especially like a stamina class or a couple stamina guys coming after you, you need to get out of there quick. Okay, shielding is not going to help. What this helps with is, first of all, it stuns the enemies around you, and then it creates space. It gives you some room to breathe where you can then pop your shield, pop your heals, use your ultimate, whatever you need to do to regroup. Streak is going to help you do that. So I do like having this on the front bar. I use it more as a defensive tool, but you can use it offensively as well. Force Pulse is sort of our main damage source, and I went with the damage morph. This does a little bit more damage, so I do like that. You can take the other morph, which does an interrupt, and I may switch to that eventually because with things like the Templar, Execute getting buffed, and then Snipe Spammers, having a ranged interrupt can be nice. So you can choose here. Force Pulse or Crushing Shock is the other morph. Then Crystal Frags is on the build on the front bar, and this is just going to help us burst people down. You're going to line this up with your Force Pulse, with your Execute to do huge damage and basically annihilate people. That's the whole premise of the build, right? The ultimate here, I went with something kind of old school. I went with Dawnbreaker of Smiting, and yes, I know it's physical damage. Doesn't quite make sense, but I wanted something really quick and bursty. And Dawnbreaker of Smiting does just that. It's a quick burst that you can add in, just that little bit of extra damage to get somebody down, or if you have a small group in front of you, it's really going to help. So you can put in other things here. You can put a Sorcerer Ultimate, you can put Overload. It's up to you, but I do like the burst potential on the front bar with this guy. Switching now to the back bar, we've got Haunting Curse first up. And I actually like this more on the back bar because it helps remind me to use my Resto Staff. So on the Resto Staff, I've got that little light attack spell damage glyph combo. So I'm going to do a light attack, proc my spell damage, and go right into my Haunting Curse to open up a burst on somebody. Haunting Curse gives you the nice burst damage after 3.5 seconds. So that's plenty of time to swap bars, do a Force Pulse, line up and Execute, and then by then your frags will be procced, hit them, it's all going to explode at the same time, and they're done. There's no way they can come back from that. So Haunting Curse works fine on the back bar. I like it. That's where I put it. Healing Ward is your main heal for the build. Does a nice heal as long as you keep the shield portion up. So you'll want to combine this with your Harden Ward just to make sure the shield stays up, and that's going to give you the maximum heal. We are running high crit, and so when this crits, you'll basically get a heal to full. Really nice. Harden Ward, like I mentioned, this is our main damage shield. You want to use this preemptively, meaning if you see somebody lining you up, getting close to you, put your shield on first. Put your shield on before you go into your offensive combo. This is one of the main mistakes I see newer sorcerers do, is they don't use their shield often enough. As a sorcerer, your main survival is your shield. So use this every 6 seconds if you have to. Keep it up as much as possible. It's going to help you survive in the fight. Next up, we've got some buffs. We've got Power Surge. This is our spell damage increase 20%. Really nice. And then some additional health over time. Basically a heal over time. You get, every time you crit strike, and we do have pretty high crit, you get that nice heal every 1 second. So do make sure this skill is up 100% of the time. It'll help top off your heals in between your Harden Wards. Boundless Storm is up next. This is good for a couple of reasons. Number one, we get the major resolve, major ward buffs, increasing our resistance. Number two, we do have a little AoE damage. This is going to help proc Power Surge, actually, so that's great. And then the reason why I really like it on the build, remember I talked about the focus of this build is speed? Well, there it is. Major Expedition, 30% for 7.5 seconds. Combining this with Prisoner's Rags is crazy. Okay, you will be super fast. You'll be recovering 1,000 Magicka every second. You won't lose that much stamina because you're reducing your sprint speed and you're moving fast at the same time. So on the Magicka Sorcerer with Prisoners, love it. I use this skill all the time. And then last up is the ultimate on the back bar. Went with Light's Champion. And this is really good if you just get bursted out of nowhere. You don't see it coming. Just pop your Light's Champion and then pop a shield. Okay, because even with this going, if you have 2 or 3 people on top of you, you could still potentially die. But if you throw your shield over the top of it, you're good to go. No problem there. I do use this also for my group mates. Okay, so if I'm kind of in the back and I see my stam guys up front take a big burst of damage, I'll use this to heal them up, and it does a really strong heal. What I also like about this, obviously, is it's such low cost on the Sorcerer. 107 ultimate is nothing. So what's nice about the way I've set up the ultimates is you can choose to be defensive, help out you and your group with Light's Champion, or you can choose to be offensive with Dawnbreaker. They cost exactly the same amount of ultimate, and they're really low cost. So you can choose based on how the fight's going. Do you want to push, or do you want to heal up? So I do like that about the ultimates. Alright, and then just quickly checking out the champion points. This build is set up basically for Battlegrounds. That's how I set it up with the sustain and the damage and all that, but this would work equally well, I think, if you're playing in CP campaigns. So I would suggest something similar to this. 37 Warlord, 16 Sprinter, 19 Tenacity, 64 Arcanist, 37 Mooncalf, 26 Shadow Ward, 51 Tumbling, 27 into Blast, 40 Elfborn, 33 Spell Erosion, 64 into Elemental, 25 into Staff Expert, 61 Master at Arms, nothing in this tree, then 44 Ironclad, 8 into Resistant, 49 Hardy, 37 Elemental, 31 Thick-Skinned, 14 into Expert Defender, 56 into Bastion, pumping up those shields, 11 into Quick Recovery. Alright guys, that's going to wrap it up for the new PvP Magsorc Annihilator build. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned a thing or two you might want to try on your own. Just a quick shout out to all my recent subscribers. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. I really appreciate it. If you're not subscribed yet, why the heck not? It's free. Give it a shot. It would really help me out. So I've got a couple more build videos lined up. Hopefully those will be out soon. And until then, I will see you in the next video. Later.